News tonight. Her roommate actually see her roommate Xana lying dead on Xana's bedroom floor and spots the masked intruder wearing all black.
Stop. Today, I have sworn to make you cry. Your question is why? How? But why? So, let me make you cry. Imagine that you have 4 children and in the dream of making 4 children a big man. You sent your children to study far away from you. So what if your children are brutally murdered in their own college? And when you look, you see children covered in blood and their arms, legs, heads and bodies are all torn apart and their entire bodies are scratched with nails and no one is even recognized. It seemed like it was not the work of a human being, but something else. I think that would be enough to destroy the world and every dream of life of the children's parents. If you are a parent, brother, or relative, then, for your own good, let me make it clear to you that this is not a movie, a drama, or a story, but rather a true story that happened to Kaylee Goncalves, age 21, Madison Mogen, age 21, Xana Kernodle, age 20, and Ethan Chapin, age 20, at the University of Idaho in Moscow, United States, on Sunday. This incident occurred between 3:00 a.m. and 4:00 a.m. on November 13, 2022, while killing. As a result, the tyrants mercilessly killed and separated 4 parents from their children. In other words, stop, don't scroll, don't breathe easy. Because today, I'm not here to tell you a story. I'm here to show you a nightmare. Imagine you tuck your child in, miles away, at a university you thought was safe. You say, "Good night" on the phone. They laugh. You smile. You hang up. That would be the last time you'd ever hear their voice. Hours later, your child's body is discovered shredded, disfigured, slashed with a knife like a butcher's table. Not 1, not 2, 4 children, brutally slaughtered in their off-campus home at the University of Idaho. Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin. They had dreams, futures, laughter, but now just silence. And what if I told you the suspect wasn't just anyone? He was someone who studied criminal justice, someone who allegedly planned it all, someone who moved like a shadow. In the night, Bryan Kohberger. This is not fiction. This is not a horror film. This is real. And today, ENEW evidence has come to light. Evidence that might change everything. DNA, cell towers, surveillance, victim patterns, hidden connections, and more horrifying than all of that, the method, the mindset. You're about to see a breakdown of what really happened that night and what the court knows now. And by the end of this video, you won't just be watching a case. You'll be living a nightmare that every parent prays never touches their home. This is the full truth behind the Idaho Student Murders and what we know about Bryan Kohberger. The victims and crime scene background. 4 young lives. 4 souls with laughter in their lungs and light in their eyes. They never saw it coming. The cold wasn't just in the air that November morning in 2022. It had seeped into the walls of a house, 1122 King Road, turning a student home into a crime scene, and the dreams of 4 families into ashes. The victims. Kaylee Goncalves, 21. A spark, a fighter. She was vibrant, outspoken, the type of person who turned heads with her energy. A senior preparing to graduate, her smile was a beacon. In every photo, bright, wild and ready to take on the world. She had just bought a new Range Rover. She was set to move to Texas. Life was waiting for her. Madison Maddie Mogen, 21. Kaylee's best friend since the 6th grade. The two were inseparable, more than sisters. Maddie was kind, clever, and full of wit. She worked hard and loved harder. She was building a future with Kaylee, one adventure at a time. Their last selfie, posted at 1:16 a.m. that night, shows them side by side, smiling. Minutes before, horror arrived. Xana Kernodle, 20. Strong, outspoken, full of life. Xana was known for her humor, her fierce loyalty, and her devotion to her boyfriend, Ethan. A junior studying marketing, she at a local restaurant. That night, she ordered DoorDash at 4 a.m. That order was delivered. Moments later, she was dead. Ethan Chapin, 20. A triplet. A twin brother. A beloved son. Ethan was visiting Xana that night. Happy, athletic, full of love. He had gone to a frat party that evening with her. No one knew it would be his last. They weren't just names. They weren't just headlines. These were real people. And what happened to them was not human. This wasn't just murder. It was calculated execution. The house, 1122 King Road. The white, 3-story rental stood nestled in a quiet Moscow, Idaho neighborhood town so peaceful that locals said people didn't even lock their doors. The house was a sanctuary for students, a place of laughter, music, and late-night talks. But in the early hours of November 13, 2022, that house turned into something else, a butcher's room. There were 6 people in the house that night. Only 2 would wake up. Kaylee and Maddie were asleep on the 3rd floor. Xana and Ethan on the 2nd. The 2 surviving roommates, Bethany and Dylan, were on the 1st floor. And what makes this story even more terrifying? No one heard a scream loud enough to call for help. No one ran. No one called 911 until nearly 8 hours later. The crime scene, a trail of terror. According to forensic reports and early investigative leaks, the killer entered the home between 3:00 and 4:00 a.m. No signs of forced entry, no broken glass. He walked in like a ghost. He carried a knife. Not just any knife. A KAB-AR combat knife, military grade. A weapon designed to tear flesh with brutal efficiency. Kaylee and Maddie were murdered in their bed. Authorities say they were killed in their sleep. Multiple stab wounds. Deep. Vicious. Overkill. The coroner said these weren't quick deaths. These were personal. Xana fought back. She had defensive wounds, bruises, signs of a struggle. Investigators say she likely woke up during the attack. She tried to save herself, maybe even Ethan. But she couldn't stop him. The killer was strong, said the autopsy report. He didn't just stab, he obliterated. And after the slaughter, he walked away. He left behind only blood, DNA, and a city that would never sleep again. The aftermath, 911 call and discovery. The 911 call came in at 11:58 a.m. Hours after the murders. One of the surviving roommates found an unconscious person. That's what the dispatcher was told. But what they found was far worse. Blood, trails of it, dripping down the walls, spattered on the sheets. One officer described it as a horror scene straight out of a nightmare. Parents rushed to Moscow. Some flew from across the country. They weren't allowed to see their children's bodies. The damage was too severe. Kaylee's father later said in an interview, "It was fast. It was hateful. It was a message." Why this case shocked the world? University campuses are meant to be safe, a sanctuary for learning, not for slaughter. The public reaction wasn't just horror, it was disbelief. No suspect, no murder weapon, no motive. No suspect, no murder weapon, no motive, and worst of all, no arrest for 7 weeks. How could this happen in a house with 6 people? How did no one hear the killer? Why did he spare the other roommates? It doesn't make sense, people said. It can't be random. It wasn't. And the police? Silent, withholding details. Speculations began to spread like wildfire. Was it a serial killer? A personal vendetta? A stalker? An inside job? The pressure on the Moscow Police Department was immense. The FBI was called in. The Idaho State Police joined the search. Every second passed like an hour. Every parent in America held their breath. And then 7 weeks later, a name. Bryan Christopher Kohberger. Who was Bryan Kohberger? 29 years old, a PhD student in criminology at Washington State University. Just 15 minutes from the crime scene, he studied serial killers, wrote papers on how criminals think. He once posted a Reddit thread asking offenders to describe how they chose their victims. He drove a white Hyundai Elantra, the same car caught near the crime scene. His phone went silent during the hours of the murder, but it pinged near the house just hours later. And most chilling, he applied for an internship with the local police department. He wanted to understand how crimes are solved. An official said, maybe so he could avoid getting caught, but he made mistakes. Public reaction, grief turned into rage. The arrests didn't bring peace. They brought questions. Was it really him? Why these 4 students? Did he know them? Was he watching them for weeks? Kaylee's family publicly demanded transparency. We won't rest until we know everything. Detail, her father said. I want to look the killer in the eye. Memorials were held across the nation. Thousands gathered. Candles lit. Prayers whispered. Tears fell. And all anyone could ask was why they were the best of us, said a professor. And someone took them away like they were nothing, but they weren't nothing. They were everything. And the evidence, oh, it was just beginning to come out. Because what the court knows now is even darker than what the headlines reported. The night of the murders timeline breakdown and shocking details. Tick-tock. On the night of November 12, into the early morning of November 13, 2022, every minute counted. And the killer? He was watching that clock like a predator watches prey. Because this wasn't random. This wasn't fast. Saturday evening, November 12, 2022. It was just another Saturday night in Moscow, Idaho. Or so it seemed. 8:0 p.m. 9:0 p.m. Kaylee Goncalves and Madison Mogen went to the Corner Club, a local downtown bar just a few blocks from the university. Surveillance cameras captured them, laughing, chatting, surrounded by friends. 9:0 p.m. 1:30 a.m. Xana Kernodle and Ethan Chapin attended a Sigma Chi fraternity party at the frat house just a few minutes walk from 1122 King Road. The victims were unknowingly spending their final hours doing what normal college students do, living, laughing, loving. And somewhere out there, a shadow was moving. 1:30 a.m., 1:56 a.m. Kaylee and Maddie were captured on a food truck live stream, ordering late-night snacks at Grub Truckers, a popular local vendor. This would become key evidence. They appeared calm, normal, oblivious. In the background, a mysterious man wearing a hoodie appeared to follow them. He didn't speak to them, but he watched them. He walked behind them, too close. Viewers watching the live stream that night saw it happen in real time. Who is that guy? Someone typed in the chat. They didn't know they were possibly watching a killer's shadow just seconds behind his. Victims. At 1:56 a.m., Kaylee and Maddie took a private ride home. Police confirmed the driver was not involved. They arrived at their house, 1122 King Road, just minutes before 2:00 a.m. Xana and Ethan returned around 1:45 a.m. just before the girls. All 4 victims were now home, alive, asleep. And then, the hours of hell began. 2:00 a.m., 3:30 a.m. Authorities say Bryan Kohberger's cell phone went dark at approximately 2:47 a.m. That means no calls, no texts, no data, no pings. It was as if he vanished off the grid. But what they found next was chilling. The white Hyundai Elantra. Multiple surveillance cameras in the area picked up a white Hyundai Elantra circling them. King Road neighborhood between 3:29 a.m. and 4:20 a.m. First sighting 3:29 a.m. heading toward the victim's home. Last sighting 4:20 a.m. speeding away from the area. Law enforcement tracked that same car on 5 different surveillance points, driving past the home multiple times before stopping near the residence. This was not a random drive, said one detective. He was stalking the house, watching. At 4:04 a.m., a DoorDash driver arrived to deliver food to Xana. She received it. She was still alive. But by 4:12 a.m., the Elantra was seen racing away. Within that 8-minute window, someone entered the house and butchered 4 people. The surviving roommate's account. Dylan Mortensen, one of the surviving roommates on the first floor, told investigators that she heard strange noises sometime after 4:00 a.m. She described hearing crying, a male voice saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Heavy footsteps. Then, she opened her door, and what she saw made her freeze. She claimed she saw a masked man, dressed in black, walking past her toward the back exit of the house. She stood there, frozen, shocked, silent. He didn't attack her. He just walked away. That man matched the description of Bryan Kohberger. Tall, slim, eyebrows thick, eyes locked forward, like a phantom walking out of a graveyard. 4:20 a.m. Escape and aftermath. At exactly 4:20 a.m., the Elantra was seen again on surveillance, speeding off through the streets of Moscow. By 5:30 a.m., it had left the area completely. Kohberger's phone turned back on at 4:48 a.m., and it pinged near Blaine, Idaho, over 30 miles away. But there's more. Times before. 12 visits. 12 times stalking that house. 12 times walking the same paths as his victims. This wasn't impulse. This was obsession. Physical evidence left behind. Despite the gloves, despite turning off the phone, despite the mask, he left something behind. A single male DNA profile was recovered on the KAB AR knife sheath left on Maddie's bed. This sheath was partially hidden, but the snap was visible, and a touch DNA sample was obtained from the button of the sheath. It didn't match anyone at the scene. But months later, forensic genealogy matched it to a close male relative of Bryan Kohberger through ancestry databases. The FBI then collected DNA from Kohberger's family's trash in Pennsylvania, where he'd traveled for winter break. It was a match. Statistically, It was 99.9998% conclusive. He didn't just leave blood behind, he left his identity. Was he watching the victims? Phone records, computer searches, and rumors all suggest something more disturbing. Investigators believe Kohberger may have followed Kaylee on Instagram. He may have entered the house before. He may have stalked them silently for weeks. In fact, his phone pinged near the house multiple times, even early in the morning, long before the murders. He knew that house, a former FBI profiler said. He didn't just pick it. He studied it. He walked it. He breathed it. What happened after the murders? Instead of panic, instead of hiding, Bryan Kohberger drove home. He cleaned his car down to the screws, according to investigators. Vacuumed, scrubbed, removed seat cushions. But police say traces of blood were found in the trunk lining and the vehicle's black box recorded unusual driving patterns around the time of the murders. He tried to erase everything, said a technician, but he couldn't erase the truth. One critical question: why spare the others? Dylan and Bethany, the surviving roommates, were left alive. No harm, no contact. Was it an oversight? A mercy? A strategy? Experts believe Kohberger may have planned only to kill those he fixated on, or he was interrupted. Or, chillingly, he wanted witnesses, to plant fear, to let someone live and tell the story. That theory still haunts the survivors today. Final timeline, according to investigators: 2:47 a.m., Kohberger's phone goes dark. 3:29 a.m., Elantra begins circling the house. 4:00 a.m., all victims believed to be home. 4:04 a.m., DoorDash delivery to Xana. 4:12 a.m. 4:17 a.m. murders take place. 4:20 a.m. car leaves the scene. 4 didn't just kill 4 students. It killed the peace of a college town, the safety of student homes, the belief that the monster is far away, because this monster, he was right next door, living in the daylight, studying law, drinking coffee, walking among us, and now he's behind bars, awaiting trial. But the ghosts of that night still scream in the silence. The arrest, trial updates, and shocking new evidence. In the dead of night, a knock shattered the silence. A door opened, and the monster behind it was not wearing a mask. It was Bryan Kohberger, standing barefoot, pale, silent, and that's when it ended for him and began for the world. December 30, 2022, arrested while sleeping. It was early morning in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. Snow covered the streets. Bryan Kohberger was back home for winter break with his family. At 1:30 a.m., FBI agents and Pennsylvania State Police executed a no-knock warrant at his parents' home. They entered swiftly, guns drawn. Kohberger was found sleeping in bed, bare-chested, confused, silent. In the kitchen trash, a DNA-laced item matching the knife sheath. The hunt was over. The man who studied crime thought he could outsmart it. But crime doesn't forget. The charges. Bryan Kohberger was formally charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of felony burglary. He did not resist arrest. He didn't speak. He looked like a ghost caught in his own nightmare. The first court appearance shackled and expressionless. Kohberger was extradited to Idaho on January 4, 2023. He entered Later County Court in a red jumpsuit, shackled at the wrists and ankles. But his face, emotionless. Not a flicker. Not a tremble. Kaylee's father, Steve Goncalves, sat in the courtroom, his eyes locked on the man accused of butchering his daughter. "I wanted him to look at me," Steve later said. But he didn't. He couldn't. Defense strategy: a battle of shadows. Kohberger's court-appointed attorneys quickly began weaving a defense subtle, strategic. They argued there's no direct video of Kohberger entering or exiting the home. The DNA is touch DNA, which can be transferred. Surveillance footage of the car is circumstantial. The cell phone data shows movement, not motive. But prosecutors countered with raw truth. He turned off his phone, he cleaned his car, he stalked his victims, and he left DNA murder weapons sheath. This wasn't coincidence, it was murder. The grand jury indictment, May 2023. In May 2023, a grand jury indicted Kohberger on all counts. This allowed the prosecution to skip a preliminary hearing and fast-track the trial. The decision stunned the public. This means the evidence is not just strong, it's overwhelming, said legal analyst Nancy Grace. Chilling new evidence released. As the trial approached, a cascade of disturbing new evidence was unsealed. 1. His driving route. Authorities released a detailed map of Kohberger's drive that night. From Washington State University, where he was a PhD student in criminology, to 1122 King Road, the victim's house, circling 12 times before stopping. The victim's house, circling 12 times before stopping. A professor of behavioral criminology said, this was a controlled clinical attack. He treated these victims like a thesis. 2. Search history. Forensic teams uncovered Kohberger's internet search history, which included how to get away with murder. Can law enforcement track deleted text messages? Idaho, stabbing victim's autopsy. These weren't the searches of a curious student. 3. Red stained gloves and masks. Upon arrest, police found multiple black gloves, a flashlight, surgical-style masks, and a stained pillowcase in Kohberger's car and home. The stains? In Kohberger's car and home. The stains? Being tested for blood. He didn't just commit a crime. He prepared for it, the detective said. And he left trophies. Public reaction, fury, and fear. The reaction across the U and around the world was seismic. Parents called universities, terrified. Students began sleeping in groups or transferring. Security was tightened. The public demanded justice. Online forums exploded with questions. How could someone so intelligent be so evil? Why those 4 students? Was he planning to kill again? Someone so intelligent be so evil? Why those 4 students? Was he planning to kill again? And one mother tweeted, my daughter was friends with Kaylee. She said Kaylee was scared. She felt someone was watching her for weeks. Now I know why. The trial delayed, but not denied. Initially expected to begin in late 2023, Kohberger's trial was delayed. Why? Because his defense filed multiple motions, including a motion to move the trial to another county due to pretrial publicity, a motion to dismiss the indictment on alleged procedural errors, a request to examine the method used to match the DNA. The judge responded firmly. Justice will not be denied by delay. Will not be denied. Judge responded firmly. Justice will not be denied by delay, he said. The families standing in the fire. Throughout this nightmare, one voice has remained powerful. The families of the victims. Kaylee's parents, Madison's stepmother, Ethan's siblings, Xana's father, they've all attended hearings, posted updates, and demanded truth. Steve Goncalves said in a public interview, he picked the wrong 4. He thought they were just college kids, but they were warriors. And we won't stop until he's locked away, or worse. The death penalty on the table. 2023, Idaho prosecutors officially announced they would pursue the death penalty for Bryan Kohberger. That means, if convicted, he could face lethal injection or spend life in confinement until death. The decision drew mixed reactions. Some said it's justice. Others warned of the emotional toll of a capital case. But Kaylee's family made it clear he didn't show mercy. So why should we? Is there a motive? Despite the evidence, one chilling question remains. Why? Why these 4 students? Why this house? Theories include he may have felt rejected by one of the victims. He may have harbored incel ideology resentment toward women who ignored him. He may have been conducting a sick experiment to understand fear and death. The most disturbing theory? He did it because he wanted to know what it felt like. A quote found on his laptop, investigators revealed a quote Kohberger saved on his computer. "I feel no remorse. I see people as objects. I wonder what it feels like to watch the life drain from someone's eyes." They believe it came from a dark web confession. But now they think it wasn't a quote. It was his own writing. What's next? The trial is now set for fall 2025, after multiple delays. The public will finally see surveillance videos, DNA analysis, cell phone data mapping, crime scene photos, eyewitness testimony. And Bryan Kohberger? He remains in solitary confinement, no phone, no visitors, no internet. Just a cell, a bed, and his own mind. But even that is too much comfort for what he took away. Psychological profile and public reaction. No soul could commit this. No normal human being would enter a house full of sleeping students and walk out with 4 lives on his hands. A grieving mother's words. But someone did. And now the world demands to know why. A puzzle of motives. Who was Bryan Kohberger? He wasn't a drifter. He wasn't a criminal. He was Bryan Christopher Kohberger, a 28-year-old PhD student in criminology at Washington State University. He studied why people kill. He spent hours dissecting case studies and interviews with criminals. He analyzed patterns, habits, and emotions. But what happens when the man studying murder becomes the murderer? The world quickly divided into 2 camps. 1. Those who believed this was a random act of madness. 2. And those who feared this was a planned, ritualistic hunt. Theory 1. The criminal curiosity theory. This theory suggests Kohberger wasn't driven by anger or revenge, but by obsession. A disturbing survey Bryan posted months before the murders asked ex-convicts to answer, "What thoughts did you have before your crime? How did you choose your victim? What emotions did you feel after?" Some thought it was academic curiosity. Others now believe it was preparation. He didn't want to write about murder. He wanted to experience it, said a forensic psychologist. Just a crime. It was Bryan's twisted thesis. Theory 2, the rejected by women motive. Multiple reports suggest Bryan struggled with social interaction, particularly with women. One former classmate described him as a loner, always watching, creepy stare, but he tried to fit in. Investigators say he may have attempted to message one or more of the victims on Instagram repeatedly, been ignored or blocked, felt humiliated or invisible. And that may have triggered something darker, rage not just against them, but against everything they represented: beauty, youth, joy. He didn't just want to kill. He wanted to erase. Theory 3, the incels and misogyny angle. Online sleuths unearthed disturbing Reddit activity under accounts believed to be connected to Kohberger. Posts revealed disdain for women, self-hatred, anger toward popular, happy people. Incel ideology, short for involuntary celibate, is rooted in resentment toward women for perceived rejection. Some incels idolize mass murderers. Could Bryan have been radicalized in such forums? Could his crime have been an act of revenge against a society that made him feel powerless? He picked confident, social, beautiful students. That wasn't random. That was symbolic, a cybercrime expert told NBC. Theory 4. The perfect crime experiment. This theory terrifies everyone. What if Bryan Kohberger committed these murders not out of rage, but to test himself? Some believe he wanted to execute the perfect murder, evade law enforcement, write a book, give lectures, become famous. He studied Ted Bundy. He idolized Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. And here's the chilling part. Bryan once said in a classroom, "You can't truly understand the mind of a killer unless you become one." Those words, now echoing through the courtroom, haunt everyone who heard them. Psychological profile: a narcissist with a God complex. Experts building Bryan Kohberger's psychological profile describe him as highly intelligent, socially awkward, meticulous, and methodical, but above all, narcissistic. The narcissistic. But he underestimated one thing: the grief of parents who will never stop screaming for justice. How did he live after the murders? Shockingly, Kohberger returned to class just days after the murders. He graded papers. He attended lectures. He spoke in discussions about morality and crime. One student said, "He seemed more confident after the murders. It was like he had a secret no one else knew." Theories: psychological profile and public reaction. No soul could commit this. No normal human being would enter a house full of sleeping students and walk out with 4 lives on his hands. A grieving mother's words. But someone did. And now the world demands to know why. A puzzle of motives. Who was Bryan Kohberger? He wasn't a drifter. He wasn't a criminal. He was Bryan Christopher Kohberger, a 28-year-old PhD student in criminology at Washington State University. He studied why people kill, hours dissecting case studies and interviews with criminals. He analyzed patterns, habits, and emotions. But what happens when the man studying murder becomes the murderer? The world quickly divided into 2 camps: those who believed this was a random act of madness, 2, and those who feared this was a planned, ritualistic hunt. Theory 1. The criminal curiosity theory. This theory suggests Kohberger wasn't driven by anger or revenge, but by obsession. A disturbing survey Bryan posted months before the murders asked ex-convicts to answer, "What thoughts did you have before your crime? How did you choose your victim? What emotions did you feel after?" Some thought it was academic curiosity. Others now believe it was preparation. He didn't want to write about murder. He wanted to experience it, said a forensic psychologist. This wasn't just a crime, it was Bryan's twisted thesis. By women motive. Multiple reports suggest Bryan struggled with social interaction, particularly with women. One former classmate described him as a loner, always watching, creepy stare, but he tried to fit in. Investigators say he may have attempted to message one or more of the victims on Instagram repeatedly, been ignored or blocked, felt humiliated or invisible. And that may have triggered something darker, a rage not just against them, but against everything they represented: beauty, youth, joy. He didn't just want to kill, he wanted to erase. Theory 3. The incels and misogyny angle. Online sleuths unearthed disturbing Reddit activity under accounts believed to be connected to Kohberger. Revealed disdain for women, self-hatred, anger toward popular, happy people. Incel ideology, short for involuntary celibate, is rooted in resentment toward women for perceived rejection. Some incels idolize mass murderers. Could Bryan have been radicalized in such forums? Could his crime have been an act of revenge against a society that made him feel powerless? He picked confident, social, beautiful students. That wasn't random. That was symbolic, a cybercrime expert told NBC. Theory 4. The perfect crime experiment. This theory terrifies everyone. What if Bryan Kohberger committed these murders not out of rage, but to test himself? Some believe he wanted to execute the perfect murder. Evade law enforcement. Write a book. Give lectures. Become famous. He studied Ted Bundy. He idolized Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. And here's the chilling part. Bryan once said in a classroom, "You can't truly understand the mind of a killer unless you become one." Those words, now echoing through the courtroom, haunt everyone who psychological profile, a narcissist with a god complex. Experts building Bryan Kohberger's psychological profile describe him as highly intelligent, socially awkward, emotionally meticulous, and methodical. But above all, narcissistic. He believed hotter than police, who will never stop screaming for justice. How did he live after the murders? He returned to class just days after the murders. He attended lectures, papers. He spoke in discussions about morality and crime. One student said, "He seemed more confident after the murders. It was like he had a secret no one else knew." Where the case stands now. As of May 2025, Kohberger remains in solitary confinement. His trial is set for fall 2025. The prosecution is preparing over 400 pieces of evidence. The defense is pushing to challenge every shred. But the families? They're holding their breath, praying, waiting for the day when the man who took everything finally faces everything. The trial and what's coming next. The courtroom is cold, silent, tense. 4 families sit on wooden benches, clutching photos of children who will never grow old. At the center of it all, Bryan Kohberger, dressed in a suit, hair combed back. No emotion, no remorse, no humanity. This is the trial the world has been waiting for. A case where every detail matters, and every second drips with the weight of 4 lost lives. The legal battlefield begins. Kohberger has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. His legal team is fighting tooth and nail to suppress DNA evidence, dismiss digital tracking, challenge the police investigation. But the prosecution, they're building a bulletproof case, armed with genetic genealogy, cell tower data, surveillance footage, eyewitness statements, and the silent scream of a crime scene soaked in blood. A chilling start, the preliminary hearing. On day 1, the prosecution presented a timeline that shattered the courtroom silence. 3:26 a.m. Bryan's car is seen near the victim's house. 4 a.m. A nearby camera picks up the sound of a scream. 4:20 a.m. Bryan's car is caught speeding away from the area. The GPS data. It placed Kohberger within 60 feet of the murder scene twice. The jury looked shaken. The parents clutched each other. And Bryan didn't flinch. The key evidence that could seal his fate. 1. The knife sheath, found lying next to Maddie Mogen's body, stamped with the U.S. military insignia. Inside it, Bryan Kohberger's DNA. Experts testified, the odds of this DNA belonging to anyone else is 1 in 5.37 octillion. That number broke through the courtroom like thunder. 2. Phone records. Bryan's phone pinged near the house 12 different times before the murders. It suddenly went dark between 2:47 a.m. and 5:32 a.m., the exact window of the killings. Investigators call it an intentional digital blackout. He knew what he was doing. 3. Surveillance footage. Footage shows a white Hyundai Elantra circling the victim's street multiple times, parked just 50 feet from the home, leaving at a high speed just minutes after the attack. The car, registered to Bryan. It didn't just place him at the scene. It trapped him inside the timeline of horror. 4. Roommate's eyewitness testimony. Survivor D. M., who lived in the house, testified, "I saw a tall man dressed in black with bushy eyebrows and a mask. He walked past me as I stood frozen in fear." Prosecutors asked her to point to the man in the courtroom. She lifted her hand trembling and pointed to Kohberger. A gasp moved through the room. The defense strategy, a high wire act. Bryan's lawyers are walking a razor-thin edge, and their strategy rests on 5 main points. 1. Contaminated evidence. They claim the crime scene was poorly secured. Multiple people entered before police sealed the house. DNA transfer is possible. But forensic experts push back hard. This wasn't casual contamination. This was a direct match inside a sheath beside a corpse. 2. No murder weapon found. They argue, without the knife, reasonable doubt still exists. But prosecutors counter. The presence of the sheath, the type of wounds, and survivor testimony all point to a fixed blade K-bar knife, a weapon Kohberger had interest in, based on his online activity. 3. Alibi. Driving around alone. Kohberger's alibi. He was driving around to clear his head. But GPS data proves he stopped moving just long enough for the killings to occur. If he was just driving, said the prosecutor, why turn off his phone? Why park near their house? 4. No clear motive. The defense hopes to sow doubt by saying, there's no confession, no video of the actual crime, no direct link to the victims. But this strategy backfires emotionally, because for the families, the lack of a clear motive doesn't bring peace. It brings more agony. 5. Mental health angle. There's speculation the defense may introduce mental health evaluations. But thus far, Kohberger has shown no signs of psychosis, no previous hospitalizations, no emotional instability, at least outwardly. Instead, what they found was calculated silence. Courtroom atmosphere, pain in every corner. The trial has not just been legal, it has been emotional warfare. Mothers sob when evidence photos are shown. Fathers glare at Kohberger like they're trying to hold back a storm. Siblings of the victims sometimes leave halfway through, unable to endure the autopsy testimonies. Each victim's name is read aloud before every major hearing. "We say their names so the world doesn't forget," said the prosecutor. A moment that shook everyone. During a cross-examination, the prosecution asked, "Mr. Kohberger, are you aware of the pain you've caused these families?" He said nothing. He looked down for a moment, smirked. For a moment smirked. That smirk? It sparked headlines. News anchors called it demonic. One juror was seen wiping a tear. The families looked like they'd just been stabbed again. Upcoming trial dates. As of now, the schedule looks like this. Summer 2025. Final jury selection, expected to take 3-4 weeks. Fall 2025. Full trial begins, expected to last up to 10 weeks. Live testimony from over 70 witnesses, over 50 hours of surveillance breakdown, over 200 exhibits to be presented. The prosecution's goal, the death penalty. Prosecutors are pursuing the death penalty under Idaho law. Their reasons: the murder was especially heinous. more than the attack was premeditated and intentional. Bryan poses an ongoing threat to society. This means the burden of proof is even higher. But the families? They've all supported this move. We want him to know what it feels like to lose everything. What's next? The world holds its breath. Here's what's coming. Forensic counter-arguments by the defense. Live testimony from Xana's and Ethan's families. Expert breakdown of the crime scene layout. Possibly, the introduction of psychological evaluation reports on Kohberger, and looming ahead if convicted, a separate sentencing phase where the jury will decide whether Bryan Kohberger should live or die. The bigger question, will we ever understand why? The law may convict him. The court may sentence him, but understanding? That's harder. Why them? Why then? Why that level of brutality? We may never truly know, because even if Bryan Kohberger writes a memoir from his cell, even if he testifies that no answer can heal. Final moments from the trial so far. Let's frame the pain. A father whispers to a photo of his daughter before every court session. We're still fighting, baby. A survivor still refuses to move back to Moscow, Idaho. The city is too haunted. A juror fainted during the first week of autopsy photo patients. The judge called for a break. The courtroom emptied, but the memories stayed.